Broadcasting from deep behind enemy lines in the occupied territory of the Socialist Republic of California. Your host, former California State Assemblyman and Governor candidate, Tim Donnelly.
Hey, welcome back to the Radio Free California Network. Come on in to the no BS zone. Take off your shoes, put up your feet, and get comfortable, because the one thing that you will not have to tolerate here is the political correctness that's strangling our country. Every day, have you ever read the book 1984 by George Orwell?
No, I have not.
Well, it was written in 1948. And I graduated high school in 1984, and it was required reading. And so I thought it was, I read it before 1984, I think in about 10th grade. And it's this book about how the government will control your every thought. It will try to control your every action. And, you know, you don't even need to wait for the government to do it now. We have the media. We have Twitter. I don't know what Twitter is for anymore, except when you look at the hashtags along the side that are trending. I saw one that said something about this comedian, Amy Schumer, and I've never heard of her, and I didn't know anything about it. But I guess Amy Schumer is the reason that Dylan Roof killed 9 black people in a church in Charleston, South Carolina. This is breaking news. If you are just joining us, they have discovered the cause behind the murderous, hateful, evil rampage of Dylan Roof. It is the comedic stylings of a white girl who says, among other things, that she's got cellulite, she's got a belly, but she deserves love anyway. And, of course, look, in America, in comedy in particular, there has been a tradition of political incorrectness. That's the whole point. If you're going to engage in any kind of racial comedy, then the only real rule is you have to make fun of everyone equally. And I don't know anything about Amy Schumer, but the question is not whether we should investigate the jokes that an American comedian makes, but whether or not we should actually turn back on the idiots in the media who are pushing. The bottom line is they're saying anybody but Dylan is responsible. If we can't blame it on the Republican Party, if we can't blame it on Donald Trump, then let's blame it on the Confederate flag. If we can't blame it on the Confederate flag, then let's blame it on, I don't know, guns. What was it the president said yesterday? You can't stop the lone wolf killer who has got a hateful ideology and access to dangerous weapons. See, this is the new language of control that our government, that is beginning to seep out into our culture. And it starts right up there with the President of the United States, who continually makes it an issue to blame and generalize and stereotype broad sections of humanity, as long as they're white, as long as they're Southern, as long as they're Christian, as long as they're Republican, as long as they can be demonized as conservative, as long as they can be called hateful, while ignoring the intensely insane, unspeakable evil committed by ISIS, who, by the way, he says he can't defeat. He says we can't defeat him. You know what? I don't want a president who says we can't win a war. You got us in a war. You made it worse by pulling our troops out at the wrong time. Look, war isn't political. War is an ugly reality, and it ought to be brutish and short. It ought to be we engage and we get the hell out. And we get our troops home and we get them the help they need and we get them transitioned back into society. But the longer we stay and going back after we pulled out, I mean, you're jerking around great Americans who are willing to put their lives on the line to defend their fellow Americans and defend freedom. And you can't even name the people who are murdering hundreds and thousands of innocent people because of their beliefs, because of their skin color, because of their religion, because of God knows what. They looked at them wrong, or they wore the wrong burqa yesterday, or they didn't wear a burqa, or whatever the hell their reasoning is. You can't say anything about Islamic, extremist, ideologically hateful jihadists. You can't talk about that. They've got children committing murder in the name of Allah. How's that, Obama? You can't ignore that. But meanwhile, here at home, you get passionate, you get angry, you're willing to go to war with the Constitution in order to blame people who had nothing to do with the insanity and the evil committed by this lone actor who, yes, pulled a hateful ideology into his soul. But it's funny that they want to point out Amy Schumer. What about the lyrics? I mean, do you have that song, the TSA Don't Follow Me, my rap song? I mean, go ahead and roll that, because it took us 20 minutes to get rid of all the F-bombs and all the hateful N-words in this one song that's about me, and it's really, really rude about me. But bottom line is that it is one of the most hateful songs I've ever heard, and it's not by a white guy.
I'm headed out to Sydney, Australia with Tim Donnelly. He gets caught up at security. The TSA don't follow me. Tea parties are the 40 mags by the scones. I'm fighting for gun rights to shoot in his dome. Clicking hills is no.
Did you hear that? I'm fighting for gun rights to shoot an N-word in the dome. Okay. That's not why I'm fighting for gun rights. And anybody who knows history knows that Black Americans actually, under the Black Panther Party, before they went completely insane and started blowing people up and killing people in the name of their cause. As soon as you do that, you lose all credibility in terms of having moral authority and having the moral high ground. But at one time, when they were combating police brutality, which was epidemic in cities like Oakland, the Black Panthers would stand there with a rifle in one hand and a law book in the other, because they understood their rights and they stood on their rights. They even walked into the California State Assembly in 1968 when Ronald Reagan was the governor. And Ronald Reagan was about to sign a bill banning open carry because of the Black Panthers. Bet you didn't know that. And you know what they did? They walked onto the floor of the California State Assembly with loaded rifles and shotguns. Do you know what the sergeant at arms did? Took their rifles away, walked them out, and then gave them back their rifles outside and sent them on their way. Because what they did at the time, it was not illegal to possess a weapon in that building. It was illegal by the House rules to walk onto the floor. But if you look at the respect that those in power once had for the powerful Second Amendment and the power of it, the power of the Second Amendment was there to set Black Americans free instead of to bring them back onto or under the wing of a government that pretends to protect their rights while continually eroding them. And it just gets me worked up. It gets me worked up because when people don't know their history, they're destined to repeat it. And by banning the Confederate flag, by banning all these symbols, by wanting the Jefferson Memorial torn down, you know what? You don't get to erase history. That's what Stalin did. That's what Lenin did. They wanted to erase the record of their evil. And every time that's happened, that evil has ultimately been repeated. And it's been repeated by someone who committed an even greater evil, because they were able to erase history and rewrite it. 323-746-TALK is our number, and we'll take your calls coming up after the break. Whether you're an experienced shooter or just buying your first gun, Turner's Outdoorsman has everything you need, along with a knowledgeable and friendly staff to help you find that perfect gear for your next adventure. Turner's now has 18 locations across Southern California, including a Victorville location right on Bear Valley Road. Be sure to check out the new Archery Pro shops in the Victorville, Chino Hills, and Pasadena locations. If you're not sure what you're looking for, you can browse and shop their selection at turners.com. Be sure to check out their weekly specials and sign up to get them delivered directly to your inbox. Turner's is where I turn for all my firearms and ammo needs. Remember to tell them Tim Donnelly sent you, and you'll get an additional discount. Not sure if you heard the latest, but the GOP every day declares a new front in the war on Donald Trump. It's laughable. You know, if the GOP, and for those of you who are thinking about voting for Jeb Bush and or Hillary Clinton, who are basically two sides of the same coin, the establishment candidates, GOP stands for Grand Old Party. It is the Republican Party. It is the party that was founded exclusively, solely, and only to end slavery. It brought together factions of the Whig Party, the Know Nothing Party, and the Democrats. Yes, I know you probably think the Democrats are the Know Nothing Party, but that's the Know Nothing Party of today. The Know Nothing Party of the 1860s was a party that was comprised largely of Protestants and people who were deeply concerned about immigration. They didn't want more people coming in. And now that's an awful lot of Americans, especially with the events of the past week. And we will talk about those. By the way, I don't know if you read the stories, but basically you can't turn on the news without finding out that an illegal alien has committed another crime, either murder or there was a 6-time deportee. I forget which state he was in, who ran over some kids. What do you call that? Hit and run. And then in Texas, of course, an illegal alien took a hammer and beat his wife to death with the hammer. We're going to go to Dan from Sonoma. Dan, welcome to the show.
Hi, Tim. Thanks very much. You mentioned at your monologue here regarding violence and anger and hatred in not just the country, but the Middle East and actually throughout the world. And Obama was saying, as you said, that he can't defeat ISIS. Well, sad but true, he can't defeat ISIS in part because he and his Democrat Party have slashed the military so badly we no longer have the means to defend ourselves.
Well, and it's funny you would mention that. Not funny, but ironic, because I just got a text from a friend, and it looks like the Army is going to cut another 40,000 soldiers. They're cutting the troops way back, and I understand. Look, I'm a fiscal hawk, and I don't want to be at war. But if we're at war, I don't want to shortchange our guys and gals that are out there. I want to wage the war. I want it to be ugly, brutish, and short, and I want them to get the hell out. And I don't want to go to war everywhere for every reason. I think as Americans, and I think this is something that really true Americans, and I'm going to say that because I don't want to be divisive. I don't care if you're liberal or conservative. If you believe truly in defending America and defending freedom, then you will want us to go to war as little as possible and only when there is a truly moral, just cause to do so. And we should pull together the American people through the Congress by honoring the Constitution and declaring war. And then when we're there, you're never going to have everybody in agreement, but at least we have gone through the process of involving the people and getting their blessing on such an endeavor. And, I don't get it. I think most Americans want to see ISIS wiped out, and we should be doing everything that is effective to bring that about.
Well, it is the law. It's the Constitution, as you say. The Founding Fathers understood we live in a very dangerous world, and you have to defend against enemies, foreign and domestic. They knew that at some point you had to go overseas and deal with a threat, and that's been a constant for centuries. Now, why there's such a hesitation today, I hate to say it, it was the mistakes of the Bush administration during their war in Iraq. Now, I'm not saying that they shouldn't have gone, but they made a number of critical errors. One, most notably, not selling to the American people why they're going there. What are they doing? What was the definition? I'm very much a news junkie. I follow the news more religiously than most. If you ask me, I could not figure out what the definition of victory was from the Bush administration in Iraq.
Yeah, well, and look, I'm not someone who's going to sit here and defend every Republican administration, because we point out the faults of the Republicans just the same as we point out the faults of the Democrats. But the bottom line is that the Constitution is our guide. And I remember those times. I remember how angry we all were, and there was this cooling off period after 9/11, in which case we were preparing for the initial strikes and then later for expanding the war. And you're right. There could have been a much better job done of actually laying out the case. And sometimes you have to lay out the case, and good, bad, or indifferent, let the people decide. And through the Congress.
Well, I agree. Bringing the argument back home, you also mentioned violence here in the United States. If you look at things a certain way, the police or our domestic military, the responsibilities they have are not much different than the overseas military. They're here to keep the peace and the civil society going here in this country. What has this administration done? Divided them, weakened them. Look at Baltimore. It's a war zone. Why? Because people have lost faith in the police department. That has to change big time, or else we are facing chaos like you can't believe.
Well, we described the war zone that is Baltimore, that is Chicago, that is some of the larger cities like Camden, New Jersey, and other places where you basically have 30 people die in 30 days or 25 in a weekend, and nobody cares unless they're killed by a white cop, and they can sell soap by ginning up a bunch of emotion about it. But when it's black on black crime, when it's white on white crime, when it's Hispanic on Hispanic, and it's just every day of the week criminals who are committing murder, they don't care. And it's certainly disturbing to me the more I dig down into this, to find that the media uses their power rather than exposing the government and the nonsense and the corruption. They use it for titillation and entertainment, and ultimately the people are dumber as a result, rather than being a watchdog on the government, which is why the power of the press was put in the First Amendment.
Well, with all due respect, Tim, I'm not certain if that's true. I think people do care, and I bring up the midterm elections in 2014. People are so angry, they're so frustrated by this administration. They see the race war, they see the slashing of the military, they see the overspending. I've never seen such an election where millions upon millions of good Americans came out in droves and voted out Democrats and put in Republicans. Now, not the Republicans are going to do anything about that, but they're still angry and they're frustrated. This was the only thing that they could possibly do. I hope the Republicans get the message, but I kind of doubt it.
I'm not going to hold my breath. But look, you're right. They sent a mandate. The problem is the voter turnout was very low, but the message was clear. I agree with you on that. Dan, we're out of time. We'll continue to take your calls right after this break. 323-746-TALK. If you've been listening long to the Tim Donnelly Show, you know that we talk constantly about defending freedom and about defending our natural inalienable rights. The Firearms Policy Coalition is a partner of the Tim Donnelly Show. But more than that, they're on the front lines every day in Sacramento and all across the state, in the courts, defending your Second Amendment right. That is a natural right that the government merely acknowledged in the Second Amendment. If you value your freedom, then you need to join Firearms Policy Coalition. Become a member. I'm a member, and I'm happy to support an organization that is doing such an incredible job. Go to joinfpc.org. The Tim Donnelly Show sent you. Or go to timdonnellyshow.com and click on the FPC link to make it easy. But whatever you do, join today. FPC.org.
Well, I'll take whatever I want.
I'm still holding my breath. Hoping that the GOP will... Wouldn't it be nice if they would fight this effectively against the Democrats? Against those who wish to deprive us of our fundamental liberties? I mean, I've never seen such a tightly orchestrated Republicans come together. I think they had a come to Jesus moment. They all came together because Donald Trump represents a threat. And it's interesting. There's an article right now on Breitbart about how some of the biggest donors want to cut off funding to... They basically are trying to whip the Republicans into shape and telling them that they need to be more civil. They need to... hold on, I'm going to find it here and pull it up. Here it is. We're saving paper today. I'm actually reading things online, which is not easy, by the way, because they always disappear right when you need them. But a top establishment Republican donor reportedly wants Donald Trump banned from the first presidential debate. If you ever wondered how politics works, this is how it works. And according to the Associated Press report, Republican donor John Jordan said Monday that GOP leaders must take steps to block Trump's access to the first presidential debate in early August. Someone in the party ought to start some sort of petition saying, if Trump's going to be on the stage, I'm not going to be on there with him. Jordan told the AP, I'm toying with the idea about it. Other donors like Foster Freeze, Foster Freeze, doesn't that sound like that ice cream place.
Yeah, aren't they the ones that Foster's Freeze and like Orange Julius? Right?
He's a billionaire, but I don't think he made his money on that unless he changed his last name from Friess to Freeze.
Oh, wrong guy.
I honestly don't know, but I just thought it was funny. He has reportedly sent a letter to the Republican National Committee Chairman Reince Priebus and 16 White House hopefuls, asking them to join the effort to inspire a more civil way of debating our candidates and end the Republican on Republican violence. Our candidates will benefit if they all submit to Ronald Reagan's 11th commandment, thou shalt not speak ill of a fellow Republican, reportedly wrote in a letter in which he cited the backing of casino magnate Sheldon Adelson and Chicago Cubs co-owner Todd Ricketts. Now, and he further says, if they drift off the civility reservation, let's all immediately communicate that to them. Now, look, there's nothing wrong with just simply trying to communicate. But when you're trying to ban a viewpoint because you're uncomfortable with the viewpoint, and I think by now, everyone can easily say, yes, I don't believe Donald Trump is a racist. Donald Trump is someone who said something in a way that was deeply offensive to a lot of people. He wasn't reading from notes. He just randomly decided to make a point, and he did it in what was worse is he did it in language that if he'd thought it through, he would have said it differently, and maybe it wouldn't have inspired such rage from the political establishment. And but it's funny to watch the GOP get into such a tizzy over it. We're going to take a call from Robert from Hemet. Robert, welcome to the Tim Donnelly Show.
Hey, thank you for having me on the air.
You got it.
I wanted to. I'm Hispanic, and I do feel ashamed when Hispanic or Latinos are involved in a hit and run accident, or they get stopped for DUIs, and but at the same time, it's not the only people that are causing problems like this. I just think that goes for everybody.
I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree with you more, Robert. And as a matter of fact, if you listen to yesterday's show, my focus is on the Democrat policies. I don't care if people are Hispanic. I don't care if they're black. I don't care if they're Asian. I could care less what color their skin is. What I care about is if they want to kill Americans, if they want to kill a woman who's 32 years old in the prime of her life for no reason, but they go to the city where they commit the killing because the Democrats have told them, we will not prosecute people who are present in this city illegally. We will leave you alone. You have sanctuary here. Then I have a problem. Then I have a problem because then that was 100% preventable, and we have an orchestrated policy by the sheriff there, who, by the way, is a dirtbag who beats his wife. We've going to have some tape on that later. And by the way, funny thing, he's a cop, so he doesn't get in any trouble. But the thing is, and the issue here is very simple. That policy of not cooperating with the federal authorities when you have a dangerous criminal. And look, the federal immigration authorities screwed up big time. But then it was compounded by this stupid policy that San Francisco has put into effect. And this is not the first time that innocent people have been murdered by a gang member. And I don't call him Hispanic, by the way. I called the first guy was an MS-13 gang member, which is Mara Salvatrucha, and they're from El Salvador, and their whole goal in life is to kill the Mexican gang members, and they've got some feud going on, going way back to the streets of L.A., and most Californians don't know that history. But I agree with you. They're certainly not the only ones committing crimes, but for once, we've got the stupid media that likes to block out the truth because they don't want to talk about illegal immigration, which is very different from, talking about whether or not Donald Trump is a racist. I don't believe that Donald Trump meant to say something as offensive as it came off, but it certainly came off offensive, and we called him to task on this show on day one.
Well, yeah, I don't believe he's a racist either, but for what I heard, what he said, it was basically meant for the Mexican people because Mexico is obviously south of the border, and he just mentioned, Mexico is sending us their trash over here and their problems to the U.S. But, okay, we go way back to new laws and new policies coming out where it's giving people, and this is regarding to any kind of people, any race, any religion, they allow them to express their opinion and the right of speech of anything nowadays. And that's why we're having the issue of the Confederate flag. We had this issue back like 7 years ago about San Diego State University when they had to ban their flag for their mascot, which was an Indian. And to me, that was ridiculous. It's ridiculous what's going on now with the Confederate flag. It's ridiculous how the media blows up any little story that has to do with race or religion. And unfortunately for Donald Trump, it's almost the same thing that happened to Donald Sterling.
You're right.
He said something, it got blown out of proportion, and now Donald Trump is facing basically almost, I don't know if it's going to happen or not, but being banned from the race to presidential.
Yeah,
candidate.
well, they're trying to, you're right, they're trying to ban him out of the debates. They're trying to shut him up, shut him down, and not only that, but you've got an orchestrated move to put him out of business. It's like if you hold a certain viewpoint, and yes, he expressed it in a way that was offensive, but I think he clarified it after that. But he stuck to his guns by saying, wait a minute, are we in favor of having a wide open border when it means that you've got people, and you know this, you got people that are coming into this country or being brought into this country and sold into the fields as indentured servants. They're not much better off than they were in Mexico or in Central America. And there's a desperation. He might have done a lot better if he said, look, there's a lot of desperate people who really just want to be left alone. They don't want to be worried about the drug cartels. They don't want to be worried about a corrupt government. They want to be able to make enough money to feed their families. And they're come here in search of some kind of peace and quiet and the ability to work and get ahead and be safe. And yes.
And it's ridiculous. And I say it myself, as a Hispanic, as a Mexican. My parents are Mexican. I was born in the United States. And it's embarrassing to me to hear Hispanics receiving their license with no documents. They're giving them a license, but they're not taking advantage of it. They use it now, and they're getting DUIs, and they're getting all these dumb tickets and dumb infractions, and creating this big problem now where people are saying, why did we give them licenses and stuff like that? But at the same time, we do need those illegal immigrants in a certain way for jobs that people, even though we say, oh, they're taking our jobs, we don't want to do some certain jobs that nobody wants to do. They take those jobs.
Hey, Robert, be careful because you don't want to get my wife all fired up. She's probably listening, and her family immigrated here from the Philippines, and they came legally, and it was a big process. As a matter of fact, her grandfather came and then had to wait 12 years to be able to sponsor his family, and so when he brought the family over, you know what they did? They worked in the strawberry fields in Santa Maria, which is back-breaking work. And she worked out there. And, there is a better way. I don't think we should ever depend on people to break the law, because what happens is they're abused and exploited and taken advantage of. I think there's a way to address that issue and to address all these issues, but we've got to have that undercurrent and that foundation of the rule of law, because if we don't, then we become a corrupt I can't even call it a constitutional republic. We become a corrupt form of government where we're bought and sold by those with the most money and the most power, instead of being a constitutional republic where everyone has a voice. But
yep, I do believe though that our government is being corrupted in some ways.
It is. Robert, can you hold over for one break?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll be right back and continue the conversation with Robert from Hemet. 323-746-TALK if you want to get in it. Hey, you've heard me talk over and over again about Burro Canyon Shooting Park, which is arguably the greatest place on the face of the earth to exercise your Second Amendment. But it just got better, because if you mention the Tim Donnelly Show, they'll give you free stuff. You get a free hat, free coffee cup, while supplies last if you mention Tim Donnelly Show. So get out there and get shooting. For directions or more information, call Burro Canyon at 626-910-1344. Hey, if you're just tuning in, you have found the Radio Free California Network. We're talking with Robert from Hemet. Hey, Robert, how are you picking up our show? Are you listening online, or are you picking up on?
No, I'm picking it up on the radio.
Interesting.
On just stereo, car stereo. Well, listen. Let me just say one thing. If I think and I believe that if our government started protecting from the inside of our country, moving out into our borders and settling our soldiers like that in our country, I think there will be less crime. There will be less drunk drivers killing people. If you think about it, we never hear Russia or Germany having issues with terrorism and stuff like that.
Well, you're gonna have a huge disagreement with me on that, and I'll tell you why. There's a concept called posse comitatus, which is that we do not, our troops, our soldiers, our military do not see action on U.S. soil, and there's a real concern about that, because we got to worry about the civil liberties and the freedoms of those who are here. I'm not looking for a police state. I don't want somebody stopping you every 5 minutes, and being able to harass you because they don't like the color of your skin, or they don't like what you're driving, or anything else. We live in one of the freest countries in the world, so we got to be very, very careful. But look, you did have a point that I thought you were starting to make, which is we should start at the inside. We should not allow politicians to pander to different groups and undermine the rule of law, because they swore an oath to uphold the law, to uphold the Constitution. And if we enforce the law uniformly on employers and gave employers a simple way to comply with the law and gave them some immunity from making mistakes, then maybe it would be a different country, and wages would rise naturally instead of government enforcing that. And ultimately, we wouldn't have to, even though a physical barrier makes sense in some places to keep vehicles and keep the drug cartels from easily being able to move drugs and people through our border. The bottom line is that people will always come here if we continue to provide exemptions and benefits and sanctuaries, because they'd be stupid not to. If you're sitting in some hellhole, whether it's in Mexico or Michigan, and you're desperate for a better life, you're going to come to California because we're giving out all kinds of free stuff, and we'll give you sanctuary. And, that's just the free market.
Yeah, and maybe I don't know how to explain myself, but that's exactly what I meant. Our government, I feel that if we had more protection on our borders. There will be still people probably still getting into the country, but it'll be less likely the amount of people that are coming in, because there's always going to be a law that is going to get broken.
Yeah, no
matter what.
You're right. Hey, I want to ask you a question before we go to break. I want to get your take. Who do you, and you don't have to tell me if you don't want to, but who do you like for president? Who's coming through and resonating with you?
Listen, even though he said what he said, I believe Donald Trump will create jobs and bring back the economy into the United States because of the person he is. That's why I like him. Not what he said, but that's why I would probably go with him, because of the person he is, the businessman that he is, and the money that he does not need. And that will create jobs and revenue for the United States.
Well, that is very interesting. I think if there were any political pundits listening to you, Robert, they would be a little bit shocked. But here's something that I found fascinating. I would love to see a capitalist versus a socialist, both of whom are true believers. I think it would be a great race. Anyway, we're out of time, but thank you for your call, Robert. Appreciate you listening.
All right, thank you.
Godspeed.
Don't you think it's about time you treat yourself or someone you love to something very special? Well, Ozell Jewelers, the finest jewelry store in the high desert, is known throughout the high desert for having the largest variety of fine-looking jewelry and gifts for every special occasion. Ozell custom designs and manufactures their own jewelry, so you'll be able to find exclusive, one-of-a-kind, stunning styles you won't find anywhere else in Southern California. If you're looking for fine jewelry at unbeatable prices, Ozell Jewelers is the place to go. Show appreciation to that special person in your life with something special to cherish forever. Ozell Jewelers, voted best jewelers in the high desert by the Daily Press regularly for years. Ozell Jewelers has been putting smiles on high desert faces for over 30 years. Ozell Jewelers in Rancho Cucamonga, Palm Desert, and Amargosa Road by Red Lobster in Victorville. Ozell Jewelers.
Speaking of presidential politics, what is the only thing that we don't need in the 2016 presidential election?
Another candidate?
Ding, 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 ding. Yeah. But we're going to get one. Have you ever heard of ex-Virginia Governor Jim Gilmore?
No.
Neither have I. But he is going to run for president. I'm sorry, if you don't have any name ID. I mean, at least we can give it to Donald Trump. We can give it to even Jeb Bush. He's got a name. People may hate it, but it's there. We can give it to, Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz. They are U.S. senators, which, of course, there's only 2 from each state. So that's a pretty major platform from which to work. And a number of the candidates, Mike Huckabee and others, Rick Santorum, have developed national followings. Who the hell is Jim Gilmore? And why would we need him? I don't know. It's it is a mystery to me, and I'm sure it will be a mystery to a lot of people. But it's it just keeps getting more and more and more interesting. Now, isn't just going back to our discussion with Robert prior to the break? Counterintuitive. Guy's a Trump fan. He's Hispanic. He's not offended. He got what Trump was trying to say. He loves this country. He wants to see 2 things that I thought were interesting. He wants our laws enforced, and he's embarrassed by those of his race that that flout the law, and that he just felt a sense of embarrassment. He expressed that, and I thought that was was something that maybe needs to be heard. I don't know. It was a great conversation, and I think
I feel like he's the side that we don't hear enough from.
Yeah.
Because there's all of these things in the media, and everyone, wants to point their fingers in one direction, but, we never sit and listen from the other side either.
Well, it's like if we do what the media wants us to do, if we do what the left wants us to do, which is divide everybody into race and assume they all think alike, which, first of all, is patently offensive and flat out untrue. I don't know two people that agree on every little thing. As a matter of fact, I don't agree with my wife on every little thing, and yet we agree on a whole lot, but she's probably more conservative than I am, at least when it comes to parenting. They always call me the liberal parent. But, look, there's... What was interesting was hearing him identify with his own race and call out people, which is completely appropriate. That's his experience, and he shared that, and it sounds like it's kind of painful. He's embarrassed by their behavior, and at the same time, it's incumbent on us, I believe, and I thought the goal of our society, of a free society, is to be colorblind. To judge people not only, as Martin Luther King said, by the content of their character, but by their actions, by their behavior, and by what's in their heart. And I think we would get a lot further if we did that. And I think what Donald Trump has done is open up an incredibly important discussion. And you can love him or hate him, just like you can love or hate Bernie Sanders. But I think they are the only candidates right now in this race who have any palpable measure of enthusiasm. And I'm not saying that the other candidates aren't making progress. They all are. I mean, I read a headline the other day. Ted Cruz raised something like $51 million. Now, that's extraordinary, because Ted Cruz got into the Senate in a grassroots effort. Because I know a lot of the people that supported him and helped him win that race. And he's the only one who's extended any kind of an olive branch to Donald Trump. Everyone else is lecturing Donald. They're trying to, silence him, cut him off, ban him from debates. Were you going to say something?
I was, but I'm going to hold that thought.
I think we need people to call in if they want to hear more from the Noskinator. She's been kind of holding back and keeping her thoughts to herself and making faces in the production booth. But
so on that topic, though, why does him being able to raise $51 million mean that he's progressing in his campaign?
Well, it means people are taking him seriously.
Okay, so people are willing to throw their money at him to...
Well, first of all, Senator Ted Cruz is a very, very, very staunchly conservative candidate. He is also someone who has stood up and bucked the entire establishment, all the leadership of his party, to take a stand for the American people. He stood up against Obamacare. I think that's a large part of the reason why, A, he has a following, and B, he has raised money. Now...
Okay, because people want him to represent...
Look, the vast majority of small donors give whatever they can to people who reflect their beliefs, who champion their cause.
Right.
Who will go out there and say what they feel in their heart, but don't even know how to put into words. And so that's how you develop a following. But that's very different from raising serious money. $51 million, I would expect a Ted Cruz campaign to have trouble raising $10 million because he is such a true believer. And I can't even explain to you how he's raised that money. It's going to make an interesting story. We'll definitely cover it and follow it on this show. Because, see, if they take out Ted Cruz, Ted Cruz, not Ted Cruz, I'm sorry. If they take out Donald Trump, Ted Cruz is sitting in the wings and I think would benefit from a lot of the people that Donald Trump has woken up. And actually this crosses party lines. So but I hope Trump stays in it for the long haul, because once everybody gets over their knickers being, in a bunch, maybe that's British for saying.
Well, I think Trump just came out the gate sprinting.
Yeah.
I mean, and
he kind of stumbled a little bit with that first, like we said. And even Robert said, look, I don't believe he's a racist. He said some things a way that definitely offended a lot of people. We even criticized him here initially on this show. But and you called in and chastised us. Okay. Yeah, we got it. But look, there is nobody else. Forget about what he said about race or I'm sorry, about Mexican immigrants and everything else. Think about what he said about standing up for the American interest, standing up in trade negotiations and not taking a bad deal, standing up for the American people. We haven't heard that kind of talk in a long time, and nobody else has that charisma and that ability so far. At least they haven't exhibited it to really stand in there toe-to-toe with world leaders and throw punches. Now, look, there's some impressive people in the field like Carly Fiorina. We've heard her talking to reporters and doing a great job and being very knowledgeable. But in the end, politics is driven by your ability to connect with Americans. And for Donald Trump, he came out of the gate and immediately went from almost last to almost first and first in some polls. And that is an extraordinary accomplishment in a world that is saturated by too much coverage and way too many Republican candidates, even though we're proud of the fact that there's such a great diversity in the field. I think each of these guys is going to have their moment. If somebody makes a mistake, it creates an opportunity for whoever's on the bench. And in that 10th of a second when you step up, you can't screw up, because you're going to be doing it on a world stage and nobody will take you seriously. And that means you literally can't misstate something. You can't pull a Rick Perry and lose your wording and just completely forget that. Look, it happens, but you can't let it happen at that key moment. You got to make your mistakes in small little podunk towns, and you got to be out there campaigning in front of small groups of people so that you really develop your ability to hold it together when the pressure is so intense, when your brain goes numb. Like that ice cream freeze that you get? Yeah. That you can't let that happen. Hey, we're going to take a break, and we're going to be talking to our friend A.W.R. Hawkins from Texas, who wrote an interesting story tying the failed gun control obsession of California Democrats and the tragic killing of Catherine Steinle in San Francisco. So stay tuned. Don't go anywhere.
I have a dream that my poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
Whether you're an experienced shooter or just buying your first gun, Turner's Outdoorsman has everything you need, along with a knowledgeable and friendly staff to help you find that perfect gear for your next adventure. Turner's now has 18 locations across Southern California, including a Victorville location right on Bear Valley Road. Be sure to check out the new Archery Pro shops in the Victorville, Chino Hills, and Pasadena locations. If you're not sure what you're looking for, you can browse and shop their selection at Turners.com. Be sure to check out their weekly specials and sign up to get them delivered directly to your inbox. Turners is where I turn for all my firearms and ammo needs. Remember to tell them Tim Donnelly sent you, and you'll get an additional discount.
She said, don't hand me no lines and keep your hands to yourself.
I think somebody was in here in the Radio Free California studios doing the Texas two-step, but I will not reveal who that was, but we will bring our good friend, Dr. A.W.R. Hawkins from Texas, on the line with us. He's written, of course, another pithy comment pointing out the hypocrisy of the left on the latest shooting in San Francisco and how gun control would not have helped and certainly not have prevented what was a 100% preventable crime if the Democrats, who have blood dripping from their hands, had actually enforced and upheld the law rather than undermined it and forbid law enforcement in San Francisco from enforcing it. A.W.R. Hawkins, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tim. Great to be with you.
It is always great to have you on. You wrote a simple piece that shares the simple truth that expanded background checks for gun sales did not prevent illegal alien Juan Francisco Lopez Sanchez from allegedly, I don't like that word allegedly, he's already confessed, but allegedly shooting Catherine Steinle on July 3rd. And it pretty much wouldn't have prevented hardly any of these major public mass murderers from carrying out their evil, would it?
Oh, no, it hasn't. We've had background checks since 1993, and they haven't prevented, over the last 15 years, I can't think, and I'm hedging it that way because someone might find an exception. I can't think of a public attack with a handgun, with a firearm, that happened by somebody who hadn't gone through a background check. I'll word it that way. But the bigger point is in California, they have what we call expanded background checks, which is what Senator Joe Manchin wants for the whole country. And when you have expanded background checks, it means private gun sales are illegal. I have to, in order to sell a gun to my neighbor in California, I have to get the government's permission. I have to go find somebody who will do a background check so that I could sell a .38 caliber revolver to my neighbor or vice versa.
And Dr. Hawkins,
you have that kind of government crunch down. That's supposed to save us and make us safe, Tim. It sure didn't save her.
No, it didn't save her, and it certainly did not prevent a California state senator named Leland Yee from selling RPGs and all kinds of illegal firearms to terrorists in exchange for campaign contributions. He's entered a guilty plea now, so I don't have to say allegedly. This is a man I served with. This expanded background check didn't stop him because he was a hardened criminal, Marxist progressive who thought, oh, the rules don't apply to me.
Right. No, you're exactly right. And I remember covering his story. That's the problem. This gun control is there, and what it ends up doing is gun control will curtail the behavior of law-abiding citizens. The problem is that behavior was lawful to begin with. So what it ends up doing is it curtails the ability of law-abiding citizens to get guns with which to protect their lives. But the legislator who is willing to do what Lee did, or the illegal immigrant who is willing to do what Sanchez did, they will never be even slowed down by these gun control laws. And that's what we have to get past gun control. At some point, we have to go, it's time for criminal control. Let's try criminal control. Well, and once we start trying that, it's going to start working.
Yeah, well, if we tried criminal control, Dr. Hawkins, we might actually be deporting some state senators and assemblymen and congressmen from the Capitol to jail.
Right.
I mean, in California, we've got such endemic corruption is endemic, or it's at epidemic levels, and the insanity that you're pointing out of continually trying to punish and penalize and make it more difficult for law-abiding Californians, law-abiding Americans to procure and exercise their Second Amendment, procure a firearm to defend their lives and their freedom, and all for what? I mean, this would have been prevented if they had simply enforced the federal law and said, we will comply with federal law. We will opt in to secure communities, which is what this was all about. It was about opting out the whole state, and we will cooperate with federal immigration authorities when we have any criminal on our hands. Period. We don't care if it's a dangerous criminal or a low-level criminal. We want them deported. We want to turn them over. We want to get them out of our city because, they're committing crimes. Bottom line.
Right. No. Well, I'll tell you, Tim. And your point is actually the point, and that's what we should have learned by now. When you look at police officers, and I did this yesterday, you look at police officers who've been killed. Look in Hattiesburg or New Mexico, where some terrible police killings have taken place. And what do you find out? Police are being killed by felons who are barred from gun possession. Well, that's coming about this wrong. If these people are so dangerous, I'm not even talking just illegal immigrants. I'm just talking about felons from various crimes. If they are so dangerous, Tim, that we can't trust them to be somewhere where they might access a firearm, then they need to be behind bars. See, that's how we've handled this wrong. We've turned the criminals loose, and then we've begun to legislate based on how those criminals are going to act rather than based on how free people conduct themselves. We have to get back at some point to legislating in light of free, law-abiding people and understand that the answer for criminals is not more law. The answer for criminals is punishment. Somehow we have to get back to that.
Dr. A.W.R. Hawkins always hits it right on the head, and, criminal control is not what they're after. They're just after control.
That's it.
And that's what the whole gun control agenda is. Hey, can you stay with us for one more segment?
Sure.
Because I want to ask you about a couple things, including the murder. I don't think it was with a gun. I think it was with a hammer in your state, and also the CNN anchor who told gun control activists to shut the F up. Coming up right after this break. Stay tuned. Hey, if you like shooting as much as I do, you've probably been to a lot of ranges. Unless you visited Burro Canyon Shooting Park, you've never seen anything like it. On the way there, you'll find yourself taking pictures as you traverse the majestic Azusa Canyon and wind your way up into the Angeles National Forest. With over 600 acres, including 19 private ranges, there's something for everyone. There's rifle and pistol ranges for beginners, right up to advanced shooters. And there's plenty of spaces to shoot sporting clay. You can make a family day of it, or you can bring a group for team building exercises. Bring a picnic lunch. On the weekends, they provide lunch. And don't worry, they always have ammo in case you forget yours or run out. One thing I can guarantee is that once you visited my friends at Burro Canyon Shooting Park, you'll be hooked and you'll keep coming back. BurroCanyon.com is their website, or call them at 626-910-1344, 626-910-1344. If you're just tuning in, you missed some great conversations we've had here at the Tim Donnelly Show. But don't panic. Just go to timdonnellyshow.com. Right after the show ends, click on Listen 24/7 link, and you will be streaming this show, which begins the minute that this show ends today. And then it ends just before tomorrow's show. And if you missed yesterday, you can just go to the previous show's link, because you definitely will not want to miss what Dr. A.W.R. Hawkins says, because whenever he speaks, it's pretty much the final word on it. And Dr. Hawkins, welcome back to the show. I got to ask you about this story. You wrote about it at Breitbart.com. And look, I'm sorry, but I'm addicted to your articles. I read every single thing that you write because you have a way of putting it into the fewest words possible with the most substance.
Well, I appreciate that, Tim. Yeah, you're talking about CNN anchor Lynn Russell. She and her husband were attacked in a motel room, and I say motel on purpose. They were traveling on the Route 66 or Route 66 historic route, and she went out to her car to get something. When she opened the door, boom, an attacker was standing there. And when she opened the motel door is what I mean. And the attacker threw her on the bed. He pulled a gun, and he pulled a gun also on her husband, who had come out of the shower naked to investigate the noise. And he began firing, fired 3 times. Well, he fired more than that, but he hit her husband 3 times, 3 rounds.
Wow.
1 in the leg, 1 in the groin, 1 in the abdomen. And anyway, but the husband was still able to retrieve his concealed carry gun and kill the attacker. And so yesterday, Russell decided she had had her fill of gun control advocates telling her that, or telling law-abiding citizens that they don't need as wide an access to guns. And she said to gun control proponents, get a gun. If you don't want a gun, that's great, but shut the F up. And I thought it was a beautiful line. And it was beautiful because it surprised me. If you look at her and if you remember her, you never imagined she had that kind of conviction on the second.
Well, yeah, let's paint a picture for our audience, because they can't see. First of all, she is a beautiful woman, and someone that you would notice. So obviously this guy noticed her and wanted to do some harm to her. He did not have a dinner and a movie in mind. And right. and he forced his way into this room. First of all, what struck me was she's on CNN, and everyone always makes it out, and you also wrote an article about a Zogby poll that says that the gun rights agenda is making great headway with Americans, because Americans want to be safe, but they also understand their rights. And here it is. I've always said it crosses party lines. You've always said it crosses party lines. If you're on CNN, you're more than likely a Democrat or Democrat-leaning. But being a Democrat didn't mean you were anti-American. And I think there's a lot of Democrats out there who are a silent majority within that party who are not Marxist progressives, who believe in the right to carry, who believe in the right to keep and bear arms. And I'd like to read her exact statement. You paraphrased it, but I want to read it. This is what this woman said, Lynn Russell. If you don't want to carry, please don't. Then shut the F up about it. Make your own decisions. I wish I could have heard her say that, because that's priceless. We were looking all over the internet for an audio clip, but it's incredible that anyone would say something with such clarity in this day and age.
Oh, it is. Well, and the thing is, it is correct. It's correct. If you don't want to wear red, I wish you'd wear red. I think red looks good on you. If you don't want to wear red, at some point I might suggest you wear red, and if you don't, I just have to shut up and go on. If you don't want to listen to the kind of music I want to listen to, I might keep asking you, are you sure you've heard every song on this CD? But at some point I've got to shut up, because you're making your own decisions. That's part of being free. And that's what she's saying to these gun control proponents who can't wait to make me walk the same line they walk. who want me to make every decision they make. She is saying to them, look, you make your own decision, that's fine. I'll make mine. And because of mine, that attacker is at room temperature right now. He is at room temperature, not me. And so she made the right decision.
She would be dead. She would be dead.
Difference in others doing this.
She would be dead, and her husband would be dead if they didn't carry.
Right.
It's that simple.
You're exactly right, Tim. You're exactly right. They would both. Her husband, you could argue he was almost killed anyway. I'm not going to engage in hyperbole, but he apparently had a fairly traumatic experience at the hospital, going through surgery and different things. So even as an armed man who is shooting back, he was struck 3 times. So you're exactly right.
Yeah.
You take the gun away, he doesn't have a chance.
Yeah, and this reminds me of the Elliot Rogers case. Not in the circumstances, but in something else. And that is Elliot Rogers, of course, was the young man whose parents are leftists. They are part of the Hollywood elite. They're Democrats. The dad is a producer, co-producer on the Hunger Games movie series. And they didn't know what to do with their son. He was out of control. He had legally obtained a firearm, passed the background check, owned his gun legally. And the bottom line is, those innocent people on that boardwalk, those who were gunned down, those who were stabbed to death, and those who were run over with a car, his BMW, had no idea the evil that was lurking in his heart.
Right.
And the only true way to have stopped him was for someone to have equal or greater firepower than what he did. And
right.
Yet those who seek to use the gun control agenda to essentially control people never acknowledge that. And yet here it is. I wish she wasn't a former CNN host, because I would love to hear her on the air. I would tune to CNN just to hear her.
I would too. To hear her get in Aaron Barnett's face over gun control, I would. I would tune into CNN every single night. I would set aside the time she was on air to be sure I didn't miss it, and I would DVR it so I could watch it again. But CNN wouldn't allow that, though. It has to happen this way after the fact, because they wouldn't allow that to happen. But you bring up Elliot Rogers. Here's the deal with him. Outside of this illegal alien Sanchez, there's not a better example of the utter impotency of gun control. And the thing is, both men face the same body of laws: expanded background checks, ban on any magazine that holds more than 10 rounds, must register all firearms with the state. And then Sanchez, on top of that, lived in a city where the law is you have to keep your guns locked up at home. All of this gun control, all of it, and that lady is still dead. And I hate that.
And she was cut down in the prime of her life. She was someone right. who was the sort of person every one of us would have wanted to know, as a neighbor, as a friend, as whatever. She was someone who put herself out there for others. She was a giving person, and she had to pay with her life for the Democrat-sponsored policies. But I'm also going to lay blame on Republicans who refused to stand with me and fight this. We're going to play a clip later on of my speech that I gave on the floor the very first time this insane idea came up to turn California into a San Francisco sanctuary state and spread their policy statewide. In the first legislative session in which it was introduced as AB 1081, we defeated it, in part because I read to the governor himself his own words about how he supported the Secure Communities initiative and the program as the Attorney General of California. But it's amazing how far we have strayed from the simple truth. I want to just read the ending of your article where you quote the final thoughts. This woman is so brief in her comments. She reminds me a lot of you, except she's a lot better looking. Criminals will always have guns. The rest of us legally obtain our gun permits. And then she says, If you committed a violent crime, you can't get a gun permit. Simple law.
That's it.
How do you argue with that?
You can't argue, but here's reality. Reality is you commit a violent crime, you can't get a gun permit, you can still get a gun. See, that's the real world. That's what we have to understand. I agree with what she said, don't get me wrong, but what I'm saying is there's an underlying message here that neither you and I hit on today because we're talking about other things. But here's that message. Be prepared. Don't be paranoid. Don't live your life in fear, but live your life prepared. If I'm on the pier, if I'm in the mall, if I'm at McDonald's, wherever I am, guess what? There's a Glock in my pocket or there's a Glock under my shirt. And it's not because I'm paranoid. It's because I am prepared. And just like I grab my wallet and my cell phone in the morning, I grab that Glock because I think, you know what? I may be the only one that can keep my wife safe today. I might be the only one that can keep my kids safe today. I might be the only one that can turn that guy out when he comes in my house today. And if you're not prepared, then you're the person we're writing an article on next week, and no one wants that to happen.
Well, Dr. A.W.R. Hawkins, it's hard to argue with you, but you and I are going to have a fundamental disagreement here.
I know where you're going.
It ain't Glock for me.
I knew it.
You knew it. Well,
see, those are the kind of disagreements I enjoy, though, because we can disagree on that, and we're both equally as happy as we were before the disagreement happened.
Yes, we are.
I'm just a Glock fan.
Yes, you are, and I have not lost any respect for you, even though I will just say it. I love the heft of a 1911 45. It is my favorite handgun of all time. But on that note, we're going to say goodbye. Thank you for coming on, and thank you for constantly getting to the heart and exposing the truth about the gun control agenda, that it isn't about gun control, because there's only people control.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks for your time today. I appreciate it.
Great, as always, to talk to you. We will be right back after these messages with more of The Tim Donnelly Show. If you've been listening long to the Tim Donnelly Show, you know that we talk constantly about defending freedom and about defending our natural inalienable rights. The Firearms Policy Coalition is a partner of the Tim Donnelly Show. But more than that, they're on the front lines every day in Sacramento and all across the state, in the courts, defending your Second Amendment right. That is a natural right that the government merely acknowledged in the Second Amendment. If you value your freedom, then you need to join Firearms Policy Coalition. Become a member. I'm a member, and I'm happy to support an organization that is doing such an incredible job. Go to joinfpc.org. The Tim Donnelly Show sent you. Or go to timdonnellyshow.com and click on the FPC link to make it easy. But whatever you do, join today. FPC.org. You know, it's hard to make the transition from such clarity, such simple logic, to cover the insanity within the mind of a sheriff. The sheriff of San Francisco County, who I can't believe it. I don't know if you can, but he's actually defending their idiotic policy of not cooperating with the feds in spite of the triple murder back in 2008 of the Bologna family, and now this tragic, horrific killing that has riveted the nation, thanks to Donald Trump, who spoke about it and made it a national issue, which otherwise the media might have just swept under the rug. But, I mean, this guy is doubling down. You will not believe his comments. And he's just wants to blame somebody else. But then again, why is that surprising from a politician? You're going to run the ICE one. ICE baby.
Over 20 years, San Francisco law enforcement has been quietly helping the feds, telling them whenever the city was about to release an illegal immigrant. We spoke with several former cops who say it happened all the time because they, quote, resented the sanctuary city policy and they wanted to get illegal immigrant criminals off the streets. But then the sheriff got wind of it. KPIX5 obtained the memo the sheriff sent to his deputies in March, spelling out he and only he can turn over illegal immigrants to ICE. He sent it to all sworn personnel, basically telling them, stop going rogue.
So to be able to say, I'm going to call ICE for this guy, but not call ICE for that guy, or that woman, or not that woman, that doesn't make any sense. And while that might feel uneasy, uncomfortable, and counterintuitive to a line deputy sheriff or a line officer, the federal courts and conditions have changed in absence of comprehensive immigration policy on the federal level, on the national level, that now we're trying to reconcile that.
Long before Francisco Sanchez opened fire and killed Kate Steinle on Pier 14, San Francisco's sanctuary city status has been a source of contention. Sheriff Mercarimi says the policy is clear. He needs a court order or a warrant. In Sanchez's case, ICE only asked for a detainer, which the sheriff says under city law isn't good enough.
Local governments have the right to require a legal instrument such as a court order or a warrant.
ICE has no city-by-city breakdown, but statewide, in the last 18 months, more than 10,000 undocumented immigrants have been released from custody in California without immigration officials being notified. And the sheriff tried to turn the table on ICE, saying they are the ones that need to make sure they get it right.
I can't even listen to him again. You gotta just turn it off because he makes me sick to my stomach. Now, this guy, this sheriff, Russ Murakami, says that local authorities have the right to make a law, and we must uphold the law. Oh, wait a minute. We're going to completely ignore immigration law. We're not going to cooperate with federal immigration. We're going to pick and choose. And until they come up, and this is when he turns into a politician, until they come up with comprehensive immigration reform. Well, this is just sort of how we're going to protect the illegals so that we can stay in power forever. I mean, it makes me just want to vomit. And then when I'm sitting here like yelling at the Noskinator, and I feel bad. But when you have a leader of a law enforcement unit, and that guy's going out and contradicting the men and women that serve under him who are trying to enforce the law, and he undermines them for a political, ideological objective, which is to subvert the law. You have destroyed the morale. You have destroyed the mission of the San Francisco Sheriff's Department. You have turned them into babysitters who are political pawns and tools instead of men and women who have been empowered to protect the law and protect the citizens using the law. And this is an abuse. This is a different kind of police abuse than we're used to talking about on this show. But this guy needs to be thrown in jail. That woman's blood is on his hands, and all he wants to do is talk about comprehensive immigration reform. Right when I'm just getting ramped up, we have to go to a break. Well, we will continue. 323-746-TALK if you want to join me in this outrage. Stay tuned. You're listening to the Radio Free California Network, which streams live at timdonnellyshow.com. And by the way, I read all of the emails, tweets, and Facebook messages. So if you don't get a reply, it means we didn't get your message. And once in a while, in the deep, dark recesses of the internet, something comes along and gobbles up emails that are sent to us from the website. So please do not despair. Just reach out a different way, and but make sure that we get back to you. And you can always use the age-old, tried and true method developed by Alexander Graham Bell many, many moons ago. The telephone, 323-746-TALK is our number. And we've been talking all day about various stories, but mostly coming back to this. It's so, what is the right word? Painful doesn't cover it. Tragic is overused. But it's really hard not to see your sister or your niece or your neighbor in Catherine Steinle. Here she is, out for a walk with her dad and a friend, a family friend. Innocent walk. They're walking out onto the pier. They want to look at the sights. It's close to sunset. And completely unbeknownst to her. I mean, it's not as if she knew something hit her. She's just gasping for air. The bullet went right through her back, piercing her heart, right through the aorta. It wouldn't matter what anybody else did. She was dead, and it was just a matter of time before that became a reality. And she's begging her dad to help her. And we have some footage. Listen to her brother.
We loved Kate, and I love her to the day I die. I had the best sister. She was the most wonderful, loving, caring person. We always used to go camping in Pinecrest, and the last time we went, it was the four of us and my wife, and we just sat around and started roasting marshmallows and just started throwing marshmallows at each other, and it was like the most fun. And she won't get me and my daughter. Cherish the people in your life and who you love, and tell them you love them, because I'll never get to tell my sister that I love her again.
I find it hard not to be moved and really relate. And it's so tragic to use a tired, overused word that maybe has lost its meaning, but it's so painful and so unnecessary. It was so preventable. So preventable. And yet, we heard the same exact sentiment yesterday from Jamil Shah about his son. And he said, if your family is intact, and who knows what that means these days, I guess if you're talking to each other, if you're alive, if you're above ground, get over whatever differences you have and make sure you spend some time loving on those people who are here, because he didn't get that chance. And now a whole other family, the next time they go camping, if they can do that, because it's going to be so hard for them, there's going to be that void and that pain. And I'm sorry, but this wife-beating sheriff who got away with it, he's got an impossible to pronounce name. He just needs to change it. I can make a couple of suggestions. Douchebag, sheriff douchebag, sheriff wife beater, sheriff moron. But whatever his name is, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. He's an arrogant. I don't even know if I can say that word without the FCC coming down on me, so I think I'll reserve it. But you know what I'm thinking. Anyway, I'm going to take a call. We're going to take a call from looks like South Carolina.
Hello.
Hey, welcome to the show. Is this my dad?
Yeah.
Hey, Dad, how are you?
Good. All I can say is Sela.
I think you're going to have to translate that for those who are thinking about voting for Jeb Bush or Hillary Clinton.
Well, I that used to mean pause and think, at the dinner table. When we tried to get you to stop talking.
Oh, you're telling tales on me now how I used to filibuster at the dinner table.
Yeah, well, you were competing with the other mouths, but But the reason I called, I thought of a couple little small points, and I just want to pass them on to you and your listeners. I mentioned to you the other day, I thought this Bernie Sanders, the liberal, he's practically a communist, but they call him a socialist. He's the older gentleman that's running in the Democratic column.
Yeah, I think he comes out of Vermont.
Yeah, somewhere like Vermont or New Hampshire, up that way. And I tell you, and he's getting huge crowds.
Yeah.
At some place just a day or so, he got 7,500, and they were saying that was on a low side estimate. And they had to open up some doors in this building where he was. And the town it was 7,500, let's say, and the town was only a population of 66,000.
Wow. Well,
so he got a huge response.
He got 10,000 people at Soldier Stadium in Madison, Wisconsin, which was the largest crowd to date, according to the senior political reporter at the San Francisco Chronicle. So here's this socialist who is a true believer. He isn't owned by anybody. And
I'm the one making this call now. Wait a minute.
Oh, I see. You're going to filibuster me. Well, proceed, Mr. Donnelly.
well, I have to do that because my memory is no good anymore, and I may forget what I called. But anyway, I admire the man because he's who he is. I love what he said. There was a quote in the paper that said, "I'm going to raise your taxes." Well, that's the last thing I want, of course, but I admire the man.
Because he's honest?
Because he's who he is. He's a genuine article.
Well, it's funny. I did an interview at MSNBC the other day, and the cameraman he and I were talking about Bernie Sanders. And he's super excited about Bernie Sanders. And I painted a picture for him. I said, look, wouldn't it be great, good, bad, or ugly, if we had two people who would tell the truth? You got Bernie Sanders. Yeah. He's got 400,000 individual donors. He's raised $15,000. Hillary Clinton is running to George Soros.
15 million. Wait a minute, not grand.
Yes, you're right.
Million.
You're right. 15 million, 400,000 donors, $15 million in a matter of a couple of weeks. Hillary is running off to George Soros to beg for another $20 million for him to funnel it into her campaign. But you have on the other side, you've got Donald Trump, who is a self-avowed capitalist, who has sparked one of the most important discussions we've had in decades in this country. And on this show, not more than an hour ago, we had an Hispanic caller, a gentleman named Robert, who called in. We had a long conversation. And at the very end, I just said, hey, Robert, I'm just curious, who would you support for president? And he said Donald Trump.
Well, my point was going to be, okay, you got this the guy on the left, and then you got this guy on the right, just for simplicity, and it being Trump, and then you've got, even among the Republicans, they're ganging up on him, and all the media is, of course, and all these PC people, the religion of PC, the politically correct. They're ganging up on him. But the yesterday or today I saw, and this will bring my point to a conclusion. I saw a thing that said MLB. I guess it's a Major League Baseball guy. Some guy he was in the paper, and he had been watching. He must have holed up in his room, but he watched, I think it was 50 episodes of the Forensic Files. Now, those are 30-minute, well-produced shows that go back. A lot of them are from 2002. The very newest one is 2009, and it's the forensics of proving who's right and who's wrong, and catching the bad guy, and even freeing a guy who's in jail who shouldn't be, that kind of thing.
Right.
And the conclusion I came to after putting that thought with these two gentlemen on the far left and far right, who are both what I call ghetto blasting, like that ghetto blast radios they used to have back in the day. Yeah,
you're really dating yourself now.
Well, I was born in 1841, so I don't give a damn. But anyway, so I think people, and I guess this is a stupid observation I made, but I was a little excited about it. I wanted to call you and tell you. I think people are just absolutely hungry for whatever truth you think you believe.
Yeah, I don't think that's a stupid observation. I think that explains why not just Donald Trump, it's Bernie Sanders have skyrocketed in the polls, and they're a threat.
Wait a minute. I included him a minute ago. That's my thesis. Both sides.
Exactly.
Ted, come now. You're trying to take it as your own. You must be a politician.
Not anymore, but
you lousy politician.
Hold on, before you get carried away. The Noskinator has a question for you from the production booth.
Good afternoon, Mr. Donnelly.
Is that beautiful woman?
No comment.
You can't comment. I can comment.
Before we go to break real quick, I just want to know one funny fact that you can tell me about Tim Donnelly.
Funny fact.
Something that we can say on air.
I tell you one thing, it wasn't funny, but it just shows you his dedication. At one point, we didn't have any money, and he was going to this private school, and after school, and like I say, we didn't have money to fund it. After school, he would ride his bike 10 miles each way to work at this pottery shop to make pottery, and then ride home.
Wow. I didn't ever hear this story about a pottery shop, but...
Well, on that happy note, Dad, we got to take a commercial profit center break, but thank you for the great insight, Dad. And
all right. Love you.
Love you. I think you can tell where I get the gift of gab from my dad. That's why I dedicated my first show to him. Hey, we'll be right back after these messages. Stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. Whether you're an experienced shooter or just buying your first gun, Turner's Outdoorsman has everything you need, along with a knowledgeable and friendly staff to help you find that perfect gear for your next adventure. Turner's now has 18 locations across Southern California, including a Victorville location right on Bear Valley Road. Be sure to check out the new Archery Pro shops in the Victorville, Chino Hills, and Pasadena locations. If you're not sure what you're looking for, you can browse and shop their selection at Turners.com. Be sure to check out their weekly specials and sign up to get them delivered directly to your inbox. Turners is where I turn for all my firearms and ammo needs. Remember to tell them Tim Donnelly sent you, and you'll get an additional discount. think this past couple of hours just guarantees and should solidify your commitment to never miss a minute of the Tim Donnelly Show. You never know who's going to call. You never know what's going to happen next. And, that's part of what makes it fun. It makes it interesting. It's funny. I grew up in a family that ultimately had 14 children. So I had 13 siblings. And my dad was famous for his political commentary at the dinner table where, and this was, my memory of it is largely around the era of President Ronald Reagan, who is a hero of mine. And my dad would this is before remotes, so you wouldn't even be able to relate to this. He would reach a pool cue or a broomstick, I don't know what, because we didn't have a pool table, but to turn the mute button because he couldn't stand to hear Sam Donaldson. I mean, you think so many people whine and complain when Barack Obama is disrespected by the media. What disrespected by the media means in today's terms is he's actually asked a couple of tough questions. Well, they used to ask Ronald Reagan the toughest questions on the planet, the rudest questions, in the rudest possible, most sarcastic manner, but he didn't whine. What he did, I'll never forget when Sam Donaldson said to him, he said, "Mr. President, you're always blaming Congress, you're blaming the American people, you're blaming somebody, but doesn't the buck stop with you? Don't you take any responsibility for the current economic crisis that America is facing?" And without missing a beat, President Ronald Reagan said, "Why, Sam, you are most definitely correct, because for the longest time, I voted Democrat." No, I can't do President Ronald Reagan's voice very well. I wish I could. But, I mean, he used humor. You remember when, well, you don't. See, I don't even know why I'm talking to you. Okay, I'm talking to you people out there who are listening, who are old enough to remember when President Reagan was shot. And you know what he did when he went into the emergency room? And here's the whole country. I ran home from school. I was in middle school. Ran all the way home because I wanted to catch the news. We didn't have iPhones where you could tune in the radio and in the internet or any of that stuff. I did have a transistor radio, but I was too impatient to listen to it as I sprinted home. And ran into the house. Everybody was glued to the news, and I think we were listening on radio because I don't even think we had a TV at the time. Yeah, that's how we got the 14 kids. Irish Catholics, no TV. Okay, but here the country is hanging on every word of the news, just like after President Kennedy was shot. I'm sure, even though pre-radio, just after. Lincoln was shot, everybody wanted to know the news. Now, we have more efficient ways to transmit it today, but the president knew that the country was in peril. He knew that when the president is shot and you think he might not make it, that everybody's going to be worried. And our enemies, of which there were many, and he was a threat to them because he stood up for America. Everybody was watching around the world. So he gets in the emergency room and he looks up at the doctors and he says, "So I just want to know, Doc, if you're a Republican or a Democrat." And of course, the point was to make the American people laugh and understand that the president and the presidency were intact and that we were going to be just fine. Makes you miss a real leader. Who knows? Maybe we'll have another one. Tim Donnelly Show will be right back after these short messages. Stay tuned.
Don't you think it's about time you treat yourself or someone you love to something very special? Well, Ozell Jewelers, the finest jewelry store in the high desert, is known throughout the high desert for having the largest variety of fine-looking jewelry and gifts for every special occasion. Ozell custom designs and manufactures their own jewelry, so you'll be able to find exclusive, one-of-a-kind, stunning styles you won't find anywhere else in Southern California. If you're looking for fine jewelry at unbeatable prices, Ozell Jewelers is the place to go. Show appreciation to that special person in your life with something special to cherish forever. Ozell Jewelers, voted best jewelers in the high desert by the Daily Press regularly for years. Ozell Jewelers has been putting smiles on high desert faces for over 30 years. Ozell Jewelers in Rancho Cucamonga, Palm Desert, and Amargosa Road by Red Lobster in Victorville. Ozell Jewelers.
You know, you're in serious trouble when you get out of breath dancing in your chair.
For 10 seconds.
Okay, we will not even go there. 323-746-TALK is our number if you want to join the conversation. But we've been holding our own little referendum here on illegal immigration, even though, you know, when you hear me say the word referendum, you probably think of SB 277. And yes, we are working on that, and that is proceeding. And we will definitely get back to talking about that. But you just can't ignore when something like this happens. And you were the one, along with many others, but I happened to be in the role of being in the California State Assembly at the time that the law that has been expanded statewide, that most people don't even know about, was being debated. And the law, because I'm going to play my floor speech for you on the original bill, which is AB 1081. But before I do that, I just want to lay out what was at stake. Essentially, there was a program by the federal government called Secure Communities. It was designed to protect communities around the United States from criminals who had gotten into the country illegally, committed another crime, were either being held by the state or by a municipality, meaning a city or a county, and they didn't want to let them slip through the cracks. So the Secure Communities program, and I'm going to refer to it, but I don't actually say that in my speech. Sometimes you get up and you just talk, but was actually supported by Governor Jerry Brown when he was Attorney General of California. I know, that's surprise, probably shocking. And I reference his letter in this speech, but I'm going to let you listen to it. But this is, I believe, does it have a date on there? That's a no? That's a negative?
I'm sure I can research the date.
Okay. Anyway, we'll give you the date when we get back. But I believe, my guess is 2011 or 2012, which was the first legislative session at which I was an assemblyman. Here is my speech in opposition to a bill called AB 1081, introduced by San Francisco's Tom Amiano to spread San Francisco sanctuary policy statewide.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, I rise in strong opposition to this bill. This bill expands the concept of sanctuary cities that are codified in law in the administrative code, San Francisco Admin Code 12H.2, that led to the deaths of 3 members of one family, the Bologna family. So before you hear this nonsense about how this is going to make it safer and race neutral and all this other stuff, this is going to lead to more deaths. This is going to create sanctuary counties. Thank you, Madam. And the only county to date that is really looking to opt out of this is San Francisco. And shame on San Francisco. And shame on anyone who would invite and protect dangerous criminals. We're not talking about ordinary people who are pulled over for a traffic violation. It does not affect them in any means. This is for people who are arrested, who are charged with a crime, who then have their fingerprints sent to the Department of Justice. That already happens. But furthermore, their fingerprints will now be shared with ICE, so that if they committed a crime outside of our state or outside of this country, such as the drug cartels, who are bringing in all kinds of dangerous criminals, 4,000 of whom roam our forests. Talk to the sheriffs about that. They all support this with the exception of one sheriff. And let me read, if I could have permission to read, a letter from Attorney General Brown. This is a letter. It is dated May 24th, 2010, addressed to Sheriff Michael Hennessy of the City and County of San Francisco. This is Attorney General Brown, who is now our governor, who will have the power to veto this bill. Because I think this program serves both public safety and the interest of justice, I am declining your request. When someone is arrested, the county forwards the fingerprints to DOJ, the identity of the person, determine his or her criminal history, and to discover outstanding warrants. As in every other state, the DOJ forwards the fingerprints to FBI. All this program does under secure communities is allow the fingerprints to be forwarded to ICE. He continues on the second page. Using fingerprints is a faster, race neutral, and results in accurate information in identification. In these matters, statewide uniformity makes sense. This is not simply a local issue. Many of the people booked in local jails end up in state prison or go on to commit crimes in other communities or states. I appreciate your concern, but I believe that working with the federal government in this matter advances important and legitimate law enforcement objectives. Sincerely, Edmund G. Brown, Jr., Attorney General. Back to my own time. I urge a no vote, but before I urge a no vote, I ask you one thing, members. I invite you to sit in the living room of Danielle Bologna, whose family was slaughtered by an illegal alien drug thug that was put back on the streets by San Francisco's sanctuary policy. And I urge you to think about what you would say to her if you could dare look into her eyes before you cast a vote supporting the expansion of sanctuary cities to sanctuary counties.
That was my speech on August 24th of 2012, and it was during a very contentious last week of session in which they were trying to push 550 bills through in 5 days. And you know what's interesting is once in a while, by simply speaking the truth in the right venue, and I realized, man, as I listened to that, I was not very eloquent. It was a rushed speech, but I literally had my staff racing to the back of the floor, printing out talking points, bullet points of each speech, because the only way I could filibuster effectively was if I knew what was in the bill. Because if you get off topic, they will shut off your microphone, interrupt you, yell at you, harangue you. I mean, it just never ends. But the bottom line is, in spite of all that, Jerry Brown vetoed that first attempt to put in place a statewide, county-by-county sanctuary state, San Francisco style. And it's not like the rice-a-roni, that's harmless. These policies we've already seen have resulted in the ease of mobility for people who have come into the country and aren't looking for a better life. There's something wrong, something seriously wrong. I mean, this guy, Francisco Sanchez, was obviously on drugs a lot. Who knows what his whole story is? Who knows what his intent was? He got this gun. He was shooting at sea lions.
Well, and then in another interview that I heard today, he's saying that he had taken pills shortly before the shooting.
Yeah, he claimed he found the drugs in the dumpster. He claimed he found the gun on the street wrapped in a T-shirt or something on a bench somewhere. It sounds like, who knows what was really going on there. But that there was a similar incident. Didn't happen in San Francisco. It happened in Sacramento County, where two police officers in the prime of their lives, they were in their early 40s, and one was a little bit older. Both of them had multiple children at home. And you had a guy who had come here from Utah. He had worked there as a gardener. So he fit the profile of, hey, he just came here for a better life. And they interviewed people in Utah, and they said he was such a nice guy. Just the nicest guy in the world. Well, what the hell happened to him that he comes to California? He's in a Motel 6 parking lot. He's got some issues. He's got what the left likes to call an assault weapon. We just call it an AR-15. A police officer is investigating some kind of skirmish, some kind of fight between he and his girlfriend or wife or whatever. And the cop comes up to him and he executes him in cold blood at point blank range. Just shoots him in the head. Goes from being nice guy, illegal alien that just deserves a better life that you hear the left constantly advocating for, and you even hear the Republicans doing the same thing, but it's been pushed on us through the media and through the culture, and it's the only narrative that will be tolerated. We will not have any Donald Trumps out there spoiling our party. We will not allow anyone to mar the image that we have created. And look, yeah, there's a lot of people who have come here looking for a better life who are not bad people. Yes, they are illegally present in this country. But along with them and mixed in are a whole lot of people, we don't know how many, who have evil in their hearts, and they have no problem taking the lives. And right after that guy, his name was Luis Monroe Buscamane or something like that. He had a long name. And it was strange because he had 3 or 4 names. But when they actually looked him up, his real identity, he had like 5 felonies, had been deported multiple times. What are you guys doing in there? He was out of control. And he obtained a driver's license from Utah, which allowed him to move around, and we've created these sanctuary policies. So after he killed the first cop, of course, there's a massive manhunt, right? Cop killer on the loose. He executed another one. I mean, I'm sorry. I don't know what goes through your mind. I don't know what's in your heart when you can slaughter a human being who's done nothing to you on the planet Earth for no discernible reason. I still have not understood, and I don't think we'll ever understand why people do those things. But what we could do is we could prevent them by changing the policies and not tolerating these worthless politicians that want to pander when most people, including a huge majority of Hispanics, which evidenced by Robert calling in earlier, would just like the law enforced and would like to be treated like Americans because that's what they are. And they have no tolerance for people who've come into the country illegally. Look, they might not bear them any ill will, but the bottom line is we're a nation of laws. And if we don't enforce them, then we are no longer a nation. 323-746-TALK if you want to talk. We'll be right back after these brief messages.
You live with ghosts.
You forget, but you never let it go.
Band-aids don't fix bullet holes. You say sorry just for show. If you live like that, you live with ghosts. If you love like that, blood run. 'Cause baby, now we got bad blood. You know it used to be bad.
Hey, if you find yourself in my hometown of Twin Peaks, don't leave without stopping by the grill at the Antlers Inn. It's right in the heart of Twin Peaks. They serve dinner every night. They're right there at Highway 189 and Bear Springs Road. They have the best steaks, the best sushi. No matter what you have, make sure you call ahead for a reservation. 909-336-2600. 909-336-2600. And tell them Tim Donnelly sent you. Hey, you've tuned in to the Tim Donnelly Show, which is heard on the Radio Free California Network. We stream live 3 to 6 p.m. every weekday from... Oh, I just said 3 to 6 p.m. How complicated is that? But it has been, of course, a really traumatic week for California. It's been a traumatic week for the political class, and I say that with a little bit of air quotes because you have the political establishment. They're basically the same in both parties. Once you're in the political establishment, once you are the Jeb Bush or Hillary Clinton of the party, they are so horrified over Donald Trump. And Donald Trump, what does he do? First, he clarifies his comments, then he doubles down. He doesn't back down, and every day there's a news story. I just saw the headline come across the wires that the PGA. So you got NASCAR pulling out on him. You've got the PGA pulling out on him. You've got the Miss America or Miss Universe.
It's I think it was. Which one was it?
I'm not sure.
I think it's Miss America and Univision.
Yeah, but if it was Miss America, they wouldn't be holding it in Mexico. That was the Miss Universe.
They were airing it.
They were gonna. Oh, okay. They were gonna.
Yeah,
I thought they were holding it down there. Well, whatever. So you've got Univision, NBC pulling out on him, and this guy. This is what, if you've ever wondered about politics. My wife and I have been watching House of Cards, which is. I have to say, some of which really resonates. Other, is just fictional stuff I know nothing about. But I certainly have seen the shenanigans and the corruption and the tremendous power wielded by a handful of people in ways that are really unattractive and abusive. But can you imagine if he were not a billionaire? Can you imagine if he were not Donald Trump? I mean, just some ordinary Joe who's just trying to be Mr. Smith Goes to Washington?
Well, I think that's half the fun that they're having, though, with it, is that it is Donald Trump.
Well, but that's also why they're not having much success, because he is Donald Trump, and he doesn't care. He doesn't care what Republicans think, that he actually has donated to a lot of Democrats. So maybe Democrats will support him. I don't know, but I think they'll support him more, not because of the party nonsense, but because he spoke the truth about illegal immigration, which is something, it's become the third rail in American politics. You can't even mention it without being called a hater, without being called a racist, without being called a xenophobe, and all kinds of other really big words. And if you are thinking about voting for Jeb Bush or Hillary Clinton, let me explain what xenophobe actually means. It is a very fancy word for somebody who doesn't like foreigners and is sort of a nationalist. These are words I've been called a million times. And my rule of thumb is very simple. If the media and the political establishment are not trying to undermine your candidate, and by the way, they're doing it now to Bernie Sanders. They are going postal on Bernie Sanders from the left, then your candidate isn't worth supporting. If they're not calling him racist, if they're not calling him names, he's no threat or she's no threat. So the bottom line is that's what I look for. And this is going to turn out to be one of the most interesting presidential elections, I believe, of all time. But speaking of time, we're out of time. And I want to thank those who make this show possible because I don't do this alone. I want to thank my wife for letting me, Bethany Nosko, the Noskinator, for being an awesome producer, Cassie Cassidy, our intrepid guest booker who always lands amazing guests, and Sean McNeil, who goes to extraordinary lengths to keep us on the air, and all of our sponsors, and of course you, because without you, we don't have a show. We'll be back here 3 to 6 p.m. tomorrow. God bless you and Godspeed. Tim Donnelly Show out.